game anymore. Does he even have a chance to come back and play the game?
No.
Because now you filed against him.
Yeah, I think he does, as a matter of fact. If he establishes collusion, then I would say yes. And even if he doesn't, maybe look, if you're the NFL, what's the best outcome right now? That Colin Kaepernick get a job somewhere. It undermines his collusion argument. I mean, I'm not sure that Colin Kaepernick doesn't get an NFL job at some point. He's better than almost all the backups, maybe better than all of the backups, and he's probably better than a few starters too.
Max,
he's good enough to play football.
Quarterback.
He has a pending. He's asked to depose Roger Goodell, Troy Vincent, Bob McNair, John Mara, Steve Tisch, Jerry Jones, and Robert Kraft. And you think after that, they want those guys' phone records? Yeah. You think there's going to be a job at the end of that tunnel?
Well, here's what I can tell you. Here's what I can tell you. I've spoken to a couple of owners over the last week or two, and they both were working diligently to facilitate Colin Kaepernick getting a job in the NFL. Chances are slim to none, based on what Will said and Darren has co-signed, that it won't happen. Because history tells us that if you do something, if you go this route, they're going to send a message that, oh, okay, we might even have to come out of pocket and pay off. But trust you me, we're going to send every message imaginable to dissuade others from following in your footsteps. So in that regard, Will and Darren were right. But there were owners that were trying to facilitate him getting an NFL job.
That was then, and is that where the case, Stephen A?
What you alluded to is going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Yep, Max?
If that's what the owners decide to do, collectively, that is collusion. If they individually make that determination for themselves, but if they get together and be like, don't let this guy, hey, get down. What if they don't let this guy, we have to send a message to all the other players. That's collusion.
You don't need to get together to make that call right now.
The league extends an olive branch, and it's purely because of optics. As for Colin Kaepernick, he needs a third party because he needs to protect himself because of this collusion case. We shall see what happens. Darren, we will see you a little later on NFL Live. Will, you are sticking around, guys. Appreciate you. ESPN's NFL Power Rankings hot off the press, fellas. Week 10 here, the Eagles and Patriots remained in the top two spots. The Rams jumped the Cowboys, Will Kane, for the 7th spot after their dominating win over those New York football Giants. They're so good. While Dallas slipped to number 8 despite beating the Chiefs. Will, I will start with you because you're already fired up about it. What's your biggest problem with the power rankings?
Yeah, I shouldn't let this stuff affect me. But it just explains me. I guess irrationality, one of the reasons I get so irritated with you two is irrationality gets under my skin. The lack of logic and being unable to explain yourself really kind of bothers me. And can someone... Is that a self-evaluation? I think that's admirable,
It's
Will.
projection.
It explains the tension often on this set. Well, okay, let's see if you can do an exercise in logic and rationality. Either one of you. It'll be a toss-up.
You spent about a damn minute. When you get to the point, what do you feel? We'd like to know.
I feel like it's asinine for the Cowboys to go on a 3-game winning streak and drop 3 spots. I don't understand how, first of all, you beat the Redskins and you drop from 5 to 7. You beat the Chiefs and you drop from 7 to 8. I don't understand how wins somehow work in complete adversarial correlation to your power ranking. Apparently, if the Cowboys stay on this winning streak, they will soon be the 32nd ranked power ranked team in the NFL. So the best thing they could do is to do I'll tell you this, do what the Chiefs and Seahawks did. Lose a game. Because then you can stay ahead of teams that actually win games. Chiefs and Seahawks stay in the top 5 when they lose. Cowboys win, they drop. Well, unlike you, Will, I don't have a... Go ahead, Stephen A. I don't have a horse in the race. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm not. I know the Cowboys are your pet project here because that's your team. The Cowboys obviously shouldn't be slipping. Let me tell you what the problem is. You're right. The Cowboys should be top 5. Yes. By the way, as should the Rams, and that's one of the problems. LA was ranked too low. They had to move them up, so the Cowboys suffered, and the Seahawks are overrated right now. They ain't that good. They have 0 running game. Their whole offense is Russell Wilson. And their defense, I think Louis Riddick has pointed this out recently. People caught up to their defense. Their defense never been fancy. They just had better players on the defense. Maybe age, whatever it is, but the defense is not quite what it used to be, at least so far this season. They got no running game, and they're overrated right now. So the Rams are underrated, and the Cowboys are underrated, period.
Well, where I'm at is this. Number one, I don't like the fact that the Vikings are at number 4 because Case Keenum is their quarterback. I don't want to hear that. It's their defense that they've been riding that way with. I don't think that makes them top 4, even though their defense is elite. In terms of Kansas City being top 5, you're 1-3 in your last 4 games after a 5-0 start. Kareem Hunt slowing down, not running the football nearly as effectively as he once did, putting more pressure on Alex Smith. And when Alex Smith has to come and save the day, we know what the chances are of that happening. So I don't believe they deserve to be in the top 5. I don't believe the Seahawks deserve to be at number 6 based on the way that they've looked their offensive line, their running game, obviously, and especially the boneheaded defense that they just tried to execute the other day against Washington. You and man-to-man bump and run as opposed to lounging back in the zone. I don't understand why they did that. So to me, those 3 teams right there, 4, 5, and 6 are what I have a problem with. I would move the Rams and the Cowboys up to top 5, and if I were to move the Cowboys out or the Rams out, it would be because of the Saints and the way that they're playing. Yes. You can tell me, I think it's a debate as to whether or not the Saints deserve to be ahead of the Cowboys and the Rams. But I would look at those teams as my top 6 teams. I would get the Vikings, the Chiefs, and the Seahawks up out of there.
See?
They would be lower.
There's hope for the world. I throw up a jump ball and you both grab it with logic. That's great. That's incredible.
Well, maybe Will Kane, if you spent time making your point as opposed to spending a minute to 2 minutes assuming what we felt, you know what they say when you assume.
First step.
Well, maybe if you didn't do that, you would have known.
You built up enough bad credibility that I'm on the right step. When I start assuming you're irrational, I know most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, I'm walking down the right road. Let's get back to
By the way, I didn't say Superman. I said Clark Kent.
All right, Clark Kent, Superman, everyone. Question for you.
Yes.
If they don't have Zeke, where do you have the Cowboys?
Well, okay, there are 4 teams in the NFL. There are 5 teams in the NFL that I believe have a balanced team. You guys are on the right track. You're naming the right one. That means I think they have top 5 defense and top 10 at least. Top 5 offense and top 10 at least defense. And that is the ones we all agree on. That is Pittsburgh probably at number 1 in my estimation. Philadelphia at number 2. New England at number 3. Although that defense isn't balanced, their offense is just so good that we keep them in the top 5. And then, to show it's not my pet project, Max, and I'm not just a homer, the Rams at 4 and the Cowboys at 5. And you're right, Stephen.
Yeah, I'm proud of you.
Well, they won head-to-head. I tend to value head-to-head. But I do think, deep down in my heart, that they played again, the Cowboys would win. I know that. But I have to value what they did on the field already. And, Stephen, I think you're right. New Orleans belongs above KC, Seattle, and the Vikings. They're balanced. Against all brand recognition, New Orleans has a defense this year. Now, to answer your question, Molly, without Zeke, the Cowboys are still in that same pack. Alfred Morris and the little unheard of Rod Smith, that everyone will hear by the end of this Zeke suspension, will sustain the Cowboys till he gets back. I just think that I think even without Zeke, they're ahead of the Vikings, ahead of the Chiefs. I don't know.
Ezekiel Elliott gives you a real premium. I was wondering how much of it was the Cowboys' offensive line, but I have to give it up to Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh, he's great.
Watching when he's not on the field. He gives you a tremendous premium in that position, and without him, they're certainly not top 5 in my estimation. I think you hit on it, Will, when you said brand. A lot of this has to do with branding because the sample sizes are small in the NFL. So you think Saints, you think bad defense, right?
That's not who they are.
You think Rams at the start, and you think LA, you think they're not going to be good because the Rams aren't ever any good. Or Seattle, they'll always get there. And also they won head-to-head against the Rams. So Seattle's overrated, LA's underrated. A lot of that, by the way, and the Patriots at 2, and I have them at 2. It works because they're always good, right? Based on the record so far this season, you could argue they shouldn't be 2. But the brand is so strong, it's hard not to put them there. Philadelphia, I would say, is 1. Patriots 2, Steelers 3, Rams and Cowboys 4 and 5. But I think anyone who really thinks it through, those are the 5 teams so far.
I just love how when Will speaks, it's like, oh my Lord, you know what? I validate you guys. I concur.
Whoa.
Like we need his approval. It's unbelievable. The rookie himself sitting up there talking like he knows. It's unbelievable. But go ahead. It's actually cute to watch. It's actually cute to watch. Like you need to tell us about sports. It's unbelievable.
I'm lawyer needs to tell us about sports. As your non-football knowing self.
Please, whatever. Now you're stealing my line. Because that's what I've been saying about you for about a year.
Watch this.
Now you're stealing my line.
I'll show you how good I am at stealing.
Whatever.
I'll show you how good I am at stealing.
You're a Cowboys fan. You don't even matter. You're lucky you're allowed on the show. You're a Cowboy fan. You're lucky you're even allowed on the show.
Max's
You're
famous
lucky you're even
Jay-Z
allowed.
line. Did
No,
you approve?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
It's Lupe Fiasco.
Oh,
All right.
whatever.
Oh,
But
got
anyway.
that wrong.
It is getting so good. The second week of the college football playoff rankings were unveiled last night. Here to break it all down, our guy, Paul Feinbaum, on the show. How we doing, Paul?
I'm doing great, Molly. What's up?
We're excited. We got some good football this weekend. But first, I want to get into the rankings with you. So here is the top 10. We got Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Oklahoma, TCU, Miami, Wisconsin, Washington, Auburn. Did the committee get it right?
Well, for now they did, and now will they get it right at the end is all that matters. And it's a work in progress. You hear all the cliches. It's interesting. The top four not a great deal different, other than Penn State and Ohio State saying goodbye. Clemson, I think if you start with Alabama and Georgia, I think both of those schools are in great shape if they run the table. Now that's an issue with Auburn ahead of Georgia, and obviously Auburn ahead of Alabama as well. But I believe that if Alabama and Georgia run the table, meet in the SEC championship game, and it's a good game, they are both going to get in. I mean, you look at the loss to either one; it's against the number one or number two team in the country. So I would move them aside if you play this game, and then Notre Dame with a win against Miami and Stanford, they're in. And where I'm going here is that Clemson could run the table and get in. Oklahoma would have to wait for some help, assuming it beats TCU and wins the championship game. We're running into a Wisconsin team right now that even if it's undefeated, is not guaranteed of getting in the college football playoff because it doesn't have a great opponent prior to this point, and it won't have one at the end.
Well, Paul, it's interesting that you bring up Wisconsin because that's a valid point. But I'm gonna tell you what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about Miami because they're playing number 3 Notre Dame.
Sure.
And I'm wondering that at 10, what would happen if they win, particularly when you consider that number 5 and 6 in TCU and Oklahoma are going up against one another. Whoever wins that one, Wisconsin, and then you got Miami, who can end up beating the number 3 team in the nation and still not warrant consideration. Make sense out of that one.
If they win, they're in.
Listen to the answer,
Max, that question right there is emblematic of the zeitgeist of today.
Oh, you're the best, Paul.
Anyway, back to your question, even though it seemed like it was a week ago. Miami will be in for this reason. They'll have a win over Notre Dame, which is number 3. They would have a win over Clemson, which will be in the top 4 as well, Stephen A. So I know that they don't look good now, but they're going to pick up 2 quality wins, 2 great wins, assuming that they can continue on this path. I want to get to the other undefeated school that you mentioned earlier, Wisconsin. You know, a lot of times the strategy is schedule soft out-of-conference games early, right? If you're in a weak division, which they are in the West, and then you just win your conference championship game, and there you are in the playoffs. That seems to be a workable strategy. You're saying they're so weak, the schedule has been so weak, even if they do that, they may not wind up in the playoffs. But we know the West is weak. Are you surprised at all? Like, what just happened in the East? It looked like that the Big Ten had some teams there, and suddenly they get destroyed. Yeah, I don't understand it. And listen, it's unfair to Wisconsin. I mean, they assumed that they would play either a really good Ohio State team or a great Penn State team, but they're not going to have that. They both have 2 losses, and that's assuming that they can continue on the current path. And there's no guarantee the way Ohio State played the other day in Iowa that they're going to finish with with only 2 losses. So it's not going to help them. They're non-conference. Their wins are against BYU, which is garbage this year, and Florida Atlantic. The novelty there. Florida Atlantic is coached by Lane Kiffin, but that will get you in the playoff. And I know the superiority of the Big Ten fans are going to say, well, we deserve to be in. No, you don't. Good schools get left out every year, and that's a problem. You have 5 power conferences, and you only have 4. Now we're also forgetting with Washington, but I think they punched their ticket out of the field a couple of weeks ago. I don't think they can work their way back in as well. But there's just too much in front of Wisconsin right now, and frankly, I think it would be hilarious to see the Big Ten champion not get in, and I'm sure Jim Delaney, who's the head of the Big Ten and one of the most important people in sports, would jump up and scream, and maybe then we would end this antediluvian process and actually let a few more into the party. That might be worth it. Would that be if they get? Would that be Schadenfreude?
Man, that's another one of my favorite words. There, it would be. From my standpoint, I would be feeling Schadenfreude all over the place because. And Stephen, you're cool with that word, aren't you?
I don't know. I mean, when Max, it's a new word. You never know. Day to day. Here's my question to you.
Stephen, Schadenfreude is is the pride you take when LeBron has a bad night.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. Alabama, because obviously they're the number one team, even though Georgia is, but a lot of people view Alabama as number one. Usually in years past, Paul, you had the mentality it was Alabama and then everybody else, even though we had to take Clemson seriously last year because of Deshaun Watson. Looking at Georgia this year, I mean, is it a situation where I'm talking about in terms of the eye test, do you see Georgia on the same level as Alabama?
They're pretty close. The only reason I would put them very close right now is that Alabama is suffering multiple injuries on the defensive side, especially at the linebacker position. I mean, they've been wiped out, and that's a critical position in Nick Saban's defense. But Georgia, I'll answer that question a week from now because Georgia has its most. I think they have the most difficult test. Now, I didn't know Notre Dame was going to be that good, but Auburn is a tricky team. I mean, Auburn only has a very close loss at Clemson. It was a tight game until the end, and they blew a 20-point lead at LSU because Gus Malzahn continues to make terrible decisions in the red zone. So if they get over this test, they have Georgia Tech left. I think you could say that they're on the same level as Alabama. Alabama hasn't really been tested yet. I mean, they played a 14-point game, Stephen A., against LSU, and I had a fan call in yesterday and said, I mean, why did we play so poorly? That's the standard at Alabama right now. If you don't cover the spread, you lose.
Baker Mayfield going to be the Heisman winner. I mean, he's the type of player that the Heisman voters seem to like. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's having a great year.
Yeah, and Max, he's been there twice already as a finalist. So, I mean, there would be a little bit of sympathy. And let's be honest, I mean, this is not a great Heisman field. I know we've awarded it to Saquon a few weeks ago, and Lamar looked good 8 or 9 weeks ago, and other players have come and gone. But no one is really jumping up and grabbing, and that's why Baker, with a win against TCU, would put himself in ideal position. Now, some are going to say, yeah, you racked up 62 points against Oklahoma State in a Big 12 shootout where they do not play defense. That could be held against them, but as a Heisman voter right now, I can't find another candidate.
Who are your 4 teams right now that you think would be in?
I would go with the chalk right now. I really call me whatever you want about living in the world of the SEC, but I just happen to think Alabama and Georgia are above everyone else. I would probably pick Notre Dame and Clemson. That would leave out a lot, including Oklahoma, which has a really difficult path with TCU, and then probably have to play either TCU again. So, that leaves Wisconsin out. That leaves a couple of other schools out. But every time I answer questions like this, like last week, thinking Ohio State was back in, something unbelievable happens.
Mm-hmm. Especially a weekend like this, where we've got 7 teams with ranked opponents facing off.
You've been pretty.
Miami, Notre Dame. Whoever gets that, they're in great shape. Sorry, Stephen A.
You've been pretty outspoken in the past about Brian Kelly. Usually press conferences and things of that nature. I'm interested in knowing how you feel about him right now, that he's got the number 3 ranked team in the nation in terms of the job that he's doing.
Stephen, in spite of all the criticism of him being stubborn, he did something in the offseason that you have to tip your hat to. I mean, he wiped out his staff. He said, we can't win with this crew. He brought in some really good coaches, and you can see the difference on the field. I really like what he's done. I mean, whether I like him personally or not is irrelevant, and it doesn't make a bit of difference.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, he's proven to be a very good coach. Again, he wasn't last year when he went 4-8.
Okay.
Well, Feinbaum, we appreciate you. We will see you next week, and I'm sure a lot will change at that time after all these games this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And I just sent Stephen a thesaurus. I hit up Amazon during the break.
Are you going to send him a thesaurus?
I need one. Max, you don't need one.
Sports Center right now. First take back in just a minute. I'm Antonietta Collins. 3 UCLA basketball players, Cody Riley, Jalen Hill, and LiAngelo Ball, brother of Lakers rookie Lonzo, are out on bail this morning after being arrested in allegations of stealing sunglasses from a Louis Vuitton store. LeVar Ball, LiAngelo's father, and his wife are in China for the Bruins season opener. LeVar spoke on the incident earlier.
LeVar, do you have any updates on Leandro?
No, man, I ain't got nothing yet. I'm gonna wait till I get some more intel what's going on, then I'll let y'all know what's up.
Do you have any concern, or do you think everything's going to be okay?
Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Everybody making a big deal.
According to UCLA head coach Steve Alford, the three players will play Friday night against Georgia Tech. More on this story tonight on the 6th. Also on the 6th, LiAngelo's older brother Lonzo is in Boston to take on the Celtics. Doris Burke will be live from the Garden to preview Lonzo versus Kyrie, and Celtic legend Paul Pierce weighs in on the Cavs' biggest obstacle. Plus, Mike and Jamel react to the latest college football playoff rankings. SportsCenter at 6 on ESPN at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Antonietta, thank you. Much more at stake here than playing time. LiAngelo Ball could be in some serious trouble. If standard practices are applied, Ball and the two other UCLA basketball players arrested Tuesday in China under suspicion of shoplifting face between 3 and 10 years in prison if convicted, according to Chinese lawyers who briefed Yahoo Sports. Will, I'll start with you. How big of a deal is this for the Ball family?
Well, I think as you just laid out, when it comes to the potential punishment for LiAngelo and the other UCLA players, it's a big deal. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about, guys, concepts like due process and the fair application of laws when it comes to the NFL, CBA, or even the United States of America. But let me just explain to you something. These are uniquely American ideas. Yeah, there's some other countries out there in the world that put value on the ideas like due process, but let me be clear. China's not one of them. So when the potential punishment, if convicted, is 3 to 10 years, you have no protection. You have very little protection on how rigorous the process will be to avoiding that punishment or proving your innocence or getting towards some semblance of a concept of justice. This is the kind of country where people are lost in jail systems for very little for very long periods of time. So this could be a very big deal when it comes to how it affects LiAngelo. And by the way, that's setting aside whether or not he even gets to remain on the UCLA team, remain a student at UCLA. I do want to say this, though. While we've had these conversations and I've said, I think LeVar has taught some bad lessons. For example, pulling his teams off the court when he doesn't like the calls of the referee, suggesting to young people under his guidance that rules don't apply to you. I'm not going to sit here today and tell you this is an example of that or this is an illustration of that. When it comes to LiAngelo's character, young people in this country and in every country do stupid stuff all the time. Make no mistake, this is incredibly stupid. But it happens all the time with 18, 19-year-olds, and it seems to happen often when we travel and think the rules don't apply to us. I don't indict LiAngelo's character in any way, and I don't indict LeVar because of this. But I will tell you, there's going to be a hard lesson here, and it's going to come from China, not from UCLA or from the parents.
Let me just say that China has some economic freedom. It's somewhat economically free. It is not a politically free country, and people should take into consideration that when everyone talks that, especially basketball players, are going to exploit the Chinese market, understand you're not in a free place. We can't. I'm not going to go into the Chinese government right now, but you ain't in America over there. That's number one. Number two is I don't know that there's proof that LiAngelo did this. Why? Because the Chinese government thinks he did it, or some local branch of the Chinese government thinks he did it. That's enough for people. I don't know that he did it. Will, I think you did a good job pointing out there's no due process there, the way we conceive of it in America, a far superior political system. But finally, let me just say about the big baller brand. This is bad for the big baller brand because we're now talking in the media about shoplifting, and shoplifting is a petty crime. It's one of the reasons it's absurd that he'd be facing up to 10 years in prison for a petty crime. The young people do stupid things all the time, right? And that's one of the things that some young people do, and it's a bad thing, but it ain't. 10 years in prison is certainly not proportional. Again, you're talking about China, not the United States. But the big baller brand, petty crime, it's petty. It's not big baller. That is not on brand, and it's a bad look.
Well, it's a bad look. There's no denying that, and I agree with you, Will, in terms of this ain't America we're talking about. This is China. They live by a different set of laws, and they don't play. And it could be a very, very rough ride for LiAngelo. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not going to ignore LeVar Ball in all of this. I certainly am one of those people that have been on the record religiously pointing out how kids make mistakes all the time. They do stupid things all the time. And if they're old enough to know better, then I don't blame the parents. And I'm certainly not blaming LeVar Ball here. And on many, many occasions, I've been on the record coming to his defense as a father because I think people have used his obnoxious ways and rhetoric about the sport of basketball as it pertains to his son to attack this man. And I think that it's been a bit excessive. The flip side to that occurred today, based on the video we saw with him, pushing. I think that was his wife in the wheelchair out of the hospital. Here's the thing: he doesn't need to be coming out of his mouth saying it's not a big deal. It's a very, very big deal because this isn't America. This is China that we're talking about here, and you don't know what kind of ramifications may come down against your son. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's going to give people and incite people to come at him in different ways. You've been focusing on Lonzo. You've been spewing your rhetoric about the big baller brand. What haven't you been doing? I don't think it's fair, but there's no doubt in my mind that people are going to use this as an opportunity to come at him from that level, from that vantage point. And they're going to be talking about him as a man, and they're going to be talking about him as a father, and they're going to use this latest incident with his son to do just that, particularly if China tries to bring a heavy hammer down upon his son. And those are the kind of things that, some people may have said he should have been preoccupied with and worried about before this incident occurred. And now they have the ammunition to do that, and there's not much he's going to be able to say. I'm sure he'll come up with something, but there's not going to be much that he can say to diffuse that, because that's reality.
Well, yeah, and by the way, when we talk about traveling abroad to places like China, communist government, there's much less transparency. And how do you know that LiAngelo Ball did anything? You don't know. Because again, you're taking, so you don't necessarily, if you go to a place like that with some economic freedom, but not the political freedom to match, you don't necessarily have to do anything to wind up in big trouble.
No opinion here, just details. The authorities in China, according to the reports, went to the hotel where the teams were staying, and they questioned members of both teams, and people didn't know what was going on, and they denied coaches access to the players while they were being interrogated by the authorities. And based off of all of that, all of a sudden you saw these specific players arrested. So that means they didn't know who it was. They investigated the matter and discovered who exactly it was. So that's what makes it even more serious. They weren't playing, and they went looking for whoever it was until they found the supposed culprit.
There's economic opportunity in China that is obvious. There is not freedom. You are not free when you are in China, and that's. If I were a basketball player with economic opportunity, I would think carefully about that.
Stephen A., I like that you latch on to LeVar Ball's answer to, it's not that big a deal, because I got to be honest, there's a little piece of me that goes, come on. And I think it's coming from where you came from, Max. How big is shoplifting, 3 to 10 years, come on. But that's the American prism through which you're viewing it, right? It's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. What we're talking about here is an international incident over a very small thing. But if it turns out to not be a big deal, that might be because very big powers came to LiAngelo and other UCLA players' defenses. Like, I don't know, the president of UCLA calling the senator from California, calling the Defense Department, the State Department of the United States of America. We're talking about that kind of stuff to make sure the normal course of action in China is not followed, which is that total lack of due process, throw the hammer down on a big crime. But and just to underline it, one mistake does not a character indict. It doesn't indict.
I agree.
It's a massive mistake.
And I want to add one thing, because we're very harsh on LeVar a lot for what kind of parent he is, but he is there with his son, and LiAngelo is very lucky that his mother and father are there with him while he's going through this type of situation.
Roy Halladay died unexpectedly yesterday in a small plane crash off the coast of Florida. He was 40 years old. Doc Halladay, as he was known, was one hell of a pitcher, a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, the author of a perfect game and a no-hitter in the playoffs in his prime, which lasted years. The best starting pitcher on the face of the earth. And today, all of us who enjoyed watching him compete as a baseball player feel loss. Loss of a sporting hero. Loss of our own youth, maybe. Loss of a part of our memories of the happy part of life. Here's a thought about Roy Halladay, which might not offer solace to his family and loved ones, but might give us all something to take away from the way he lived his life. Halladay was not just a great athlete, but a mensch, a good person. He was devoted to good works in his adopted hometowns. In Toronto, he and his wife donated their money and effort to the hospital for sick children. In Philadelphia, the Halladay Foundation sought to feed the hungry, never for glory, always for charity. For every story widely told about a professional athlete misbehaving, there are dozens of stories never told about professional athletes using their platforms and their wealth to help people who just need a hand. Roy Halladay was one of those professional athletes. When you achieve greatness by the agreed-upon standards of society, when you strike the guy out or win the big game, they call you great. When you achieve greatness while demonstrating goodness, you have done a rare and important thing. As baseball fans everywhere go about our lives with the feeling of loss and death of Roy Halladay, let's spare a thought for the kind of towering decency that accompanied his enormous athletic ability, and take that with us as we strive to match it in our own lives.
Thanks so much for listening to the pod. Catch First Take weekdays 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN. Have a great day. We'll see you all in the morning.
Welcome back to the Young Turks, everybody. It is going to be a big show because it was a big night. Jake and Dan's still gone, but we're here. So it's going to be myself, John. I've also got Ron and Jimmy joining me for what should be a fun first hour of some politics. We've obviously got response to the election last night, but a little bit of a Trump's Asian vacation and an update on the fight over the Republican tax plan. We're going to be focusing in this hour on a couple of the big elections, both in terms of statewide elections and a couple of ballot measures. In the second hour, they're going to be breaking down a number of the historic elections that took place. People getting elected, that people didn't think it could happen, or they certainly didn't think it would happen so soon, and making history in a number of different ways in state legislatures, mayoral races, attorney general's races, all of that. So, big day. We got some good news for you. We got some bad news for you, unfortunately. How are you guys doing after the returns of last night?
I'm doing fantastic. Democrats, I'm so happy. There was a socialist who got elected with no help from the Democratic Party.
Well, with very little help.
Or very little. So I think that puts the death to the people who are afraid of socialism, right? That's just a bullshit thing from 40 years ago. Bernie changed people's ideas about that word, I think. So I think that's the positive. Also,
yeah, I think the people who were naturally like socialists, that's the people who are listening to Glenn Beck's radio show, and they still think the Soviet Union's out there. Like, they still think the Soviet Union.
Yeah, so I feel good about it. Also, the DA race in Philadelphia. Yeah. Are we going to talk about that at all? But if we're not, I'll tell
you. Not specifically, but obviously very good news. I think he's the sort of guy we should talk to on the show.
He went against the police union. He went against the newspaper, endorsed the Republican.
75 times?
He's an Occupy Wall. Yes, exactly. 75 times he sued the police and City Hall. Also, he's an Occupy Wall Street lawyer and Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Hillary Clinton beat Bernie in that same city 2-1. So for this guy to win
in Philly,
that's what I read today.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, me too. In the primary, she beat Bernie 2-1. So that's why this is such a big deal, that this guy's so progressive, and that he beat everybody, and shows you that the police union doesn't have any sway anymore in Philly, because it's another corrupt institution, and people are sick and tired of corrupt institutions. People want change.
Well, not at the ground level too. There were some pickups by a lot of DSA endorsed candidates. I know my hometown of
I think.
Yeah, well, my hometown, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, both of them, picked up some gains. So yeah, I think that there's something happening at the grassroots, that people are really ready for some significant change, not just lip service.
I'll say one more thing about it. I think that this shows that the Republicans made the same mistake the Democrats made in 2016, which is they ran on social issues, right? They ran on bathrooms, kneeling at football games, Confederate statues, instead of running on economics, which they can't, right? Because all they have to offer is tax cuts for millionaires. They don't have anything to offer you. In fact, they want to repeal everything that helps.
Jimmy, you don't know that. You could be talking to a millionaire right now. Maybe they like that. I don't know. Yes, but we're going to be touching on a couple of those things a little bit later on. And I don't remember what I was going to say.
Okay. That happens all the time.
Whatever. Well, we're going to keep talking anyway.
I blame the Russians. I blame the Russians.
There you go. That's probably it. Okay, well, let's jump into some of the big news, and hopefully I'll remember what the point I think was. In yesterday's marquee race, obviously there were a lot of big races, but the big one that everyone was anticipating was the gubernatorial election in Virginia, and the polls had tightened up near the end, but in the end, the Democrat Ralph Northam beat Ed Gillespie, the former Republican national chairman. He will be Virginia's new governor. We have the results there. It ends up that he beat the polling. I think it was down to 3 or 4 points, something like that, and it looks like he's going to hit up. I mean, once it's all finalized, a little bit shy of 9 points, which is significant because it looked like things were getting closer, and it looked like they were getting closer because of Gillespie's change to, he was talking about sanctuary cities, which I thought was a novel approach in a state that doesn't have them. And so there was fears that could flip things. It looks like it didn't. In fact, it might have actually hurt him, which is what I would hope. Now, we talked a little bit about him and his history since 2014. He seems to most accurately be described as a centrist, sort of old school Virginia Democrat. But if you're looking for reasons to be hopeful, during the campaign, he supported $15 minimum wage. He previously had fought to defeat a right-to-work amendment. Right-to-work is a thing that has destroyed a lot of states' workers' rights and things like that. He went against McAuliffe, the previous Democratic governor, on a major pipeline project, opposes expansion of charter schools, and has also spoken about instituting cap and trade in the state. Now, who knows what the hell happens once he actually gets into office? People need to actually make sure that he does those things or support them if the legislature can put them to him. But it gives you cause for a little bit of hope. I mean, previous Virginia Democratic governors have been on the right side of the party, even amongst Democratic governors, and it looks like this could be a little bit of progress in that area. But we'll see.
I hope so. Fingers crossed. We'll see. I know.
Like you said, you can't just let them get elected and then
go to sleep.
Go to sleep. No.
He voted twice for George W. Bush, so that's what makes me nervous about that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to be nervous.
Yeah, so
certainly.
That's the big one for me. But
he described himself as a conservative.
I know.
Previously.
I know. So that's why people were afraid it was going to be close and all that stuff. And then he kind of buckled on some of the social issues too. But this shows you that Trumpism is not really saleable to people. It's not. It's bullshit. What Trump was selling was outsiderism. Now he's not outside anymore. Mm-hmm. So now you have to.
You don't think Gillespie was an outsider?
Of course not.
He tried to pitch himself.
Yeah. But of course, no, he's not. So it was good to see this happen. This also shows that if you stick Trump to the candidate, you can beat them. Now, the problem is we have people like Keith Olbermann and Hillary Clinton saying, "Oh, I wish for George W. Bush days," right? Mm-hmm. So they're separating Trump from the rest of the regular Republicans, which is a mistake.
Well, you're saying that Trump doesn't represent Republicans. Yes. Someone like George W. Bush does represent them more.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a big mistake. In fact, Hillary Clinton did that in the general, and her down ballot candidates on the Democratic ticket told her not to do that because they want to stick Trump to the Republicans. Yeah. It makes them easier to beat. And Hillary Clinton didn't give a shit, and she did it anyway. So this is what we have to do. You have to stick Trump to the Republican you're running against, and you have to run on economic populist ideas.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting that you bring that up because there seems to be a big argument going on amongst right-wing politicians and media figures about whether there was not enough Trump in this race. Some think there was too much Trump. We're going to get to that in just a second. First, here's a little bit of video of Ed Gillespie conceding after the results became clear last night.
I want to say that while disappointed, as many of you know, my favorite verse is Romans 8:28. For in all things we know we know in all things that all things work for the good, for those who love God and are called to serve according to His purpose. I felt called to serve. I hope God will discern what His calling is for me next. But I know this, whatever it is, and whatever that might be, one Kathy Gillespie will be by my side.
So obviously, you have to have the family in the background and everything, but like a couple of those kids are probably old enough to know how the race went, and like their dad ran on sanctuary cities and vilifying and demonizing undocumented immigrants and Confederate memorials. Like that guy really cares about Confederate memorials, so that it's in Alabama or Georgia in the first place. And so this idea that I'm a Christian, I ran because she was called by Jesus to tell you to attack brown people that you don't like. I mean, that's sort of the classic Republican thing, but it became even a little bit more vicious. As you said, sort of trying to inject a little bit of Trump into the race. The idea is he won on it, and so maybe other Republicans can. I never really bought that even back before Trump won. But just because Trump is able to skate by, that the media can't pin things to him, that the voters don't care, doesn't mean that every other Republican is going to be able to just flip off, in undocumented immigrants and get elected on that.
Well, first of all, I think that guy, getting back to the video real quick, I'm pretty sure he forgot the Bible verse he was trying to quote midway through, and then he just went with it anyway, because he's like, no one's going to know. You know Romans 8:23, what I sure as hell don't, and I've actually read that book cover to cover, because YOLO. But, I think that there is no difference. I mean, we're seeing that more and more. Trump ran on this fake idea of a Republican populist. It was complete snake oil because really, when you think about that, that's a total oxymoron. But he sold the snake oil to enough people to win. Now you're seeing that Trump is Republicanism. That is what this is. All of his policies, any other Republican would be behind. Yes. That's why so many of them approve of him. What does Trump lack that most other Republican presidents didn't? He lacks any source of subtlety. So the best thing the Democrats, like what Jimmy was saying, the best thing the Democrats in any opposition can do is to make sure people know these are synonymous. The difference is that this guy talks a little meaner. But these policies are exactly the same. They are exactly the same.
I mean, considering how unpopular Trump already is, if you were to go ahead to next year and 3 years, presidents generally, not always, but generally become less popular. So God only knows what he's going to end up at when the next set of elections roll around. Some presidents in the past, when they've grown unpopular, realize that they would hurt their party by being seen with the candidates, and they have the self-awareness to sort of back off. I don't think Trump has that. No. I mean, he'll back off after they lose. He'll mock them and come up with an insulting nickname after they lose. But he wants to be there. And so when the midterm elections come around, and especially during the re-election, he is going to be all over the place. So I think the Democrats, especially individual candidates, if not the DNC, will try to stick him to the rest of the candidates. But even if they don't, I think he will.
I hope so. I hope he does. You know, it's funny, as Gillespie says that, I just answered the call from God to run in this race. It turns out God was wrong about this race, too. Boy, God is such a shitty prognosticator. Why wouldn't God pick somebody who could have won that race? Turns out God doesn't know his asshole from a hole in the ground when it comes to elected politics either. Isn't that weird? I think God's working for Nate Silver.
Yeah, God also wanted the Iraq War, and God got behind Tim Tebow. So he's got a few skeletons in his closet.
God also supported like 10 people in the last Republican primary, which seems sort of a dick move.
Yeah.
Pick one, buddy.
Yeah, come on, God.
Now, Donald Trump did end up... come on, God. Trump did weigh in on the race. He tweeted this. He's busy in Asia, but he had time to do this. Ed Gillespie worked hard, but did not embrace me. Even when I came at him, I tried to grab him, and he backed off, which I found to be rude.
I came at him like a bitch.
Those extra characters, man, he's got them all.
I moved on him like a bitch. He didn't know it hit him. He just let me grab him right by his face.
Exactly.
I had Tic Tacs and everything.
I'm really dreading the 280 character tweets.
No kidding.
Oh my God. I don't know if the country is really ready for it. So look, he said that. And let's see, we've also got, let's go ahead.
By the way, can I say this about that? I don't know if people forget, I didn't. Trump lost Virginia. So did Ed Gillespie. So why would he try to stick more to your policies? You lost Virginia.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point, actually. So let's go ahead to Laura Ingraham, basically going to agree with Donald Trump here, but this is a message that I think you're going to see on Fox News quite a bit.
Gillespie never jumped on board the Trump train. He's an old Bush hand. I think he gave it his best shot. He is who he is. He's not a populist conservative. A populist conservative like Trump, who has a strong personality and a strong message, did do better. He didn't spend a lot of time campaigning in Virginia, Donald Trump. And Ed Gillespie tried to do this dance that I'm not going to campaign with Trump, and he'll tweet for me, and he'll do a last-minute robocall. I think in the end that came off as desperate. And what if Gillespie had campaigned on preserving our history respectfully, Virginia first, law and order? Simple.
Isn't that what he did?
Pretty sure that's what he did.
Or their versions of whatever those things are supposed to, preserving our history, slaveholder statues. He did that. That's exactly what he did. And by the way, we don't have time to play all the audio, but Steve Bannon basically said the same thing. Gillespie could have won if he had embraced Donald Trump. But I mean, Steve Bannon, he believes that, but another person you might be familiar with sort of disagrees with him. A couple days ago, this was Steve Bannon said this: Corey Stewart is the reason Gillespie is going to win. It was the Trump-Stewart talking points that got Gillespie close and even maybe to victory. It was embracing Trump's agenda as personified by Corey's platform. This was not a competitive race 4 weeks ago. You could have stuck a fork in Gillespie. So 48 hours, maybe 72 hours ago, Gillespie was going to win because he had embraced Trump, according to Steve Bannon. As soon as he loses, according to Steve Bannon, he lost because he didn't embrace Trump. It's Interesting the way that works out. And Breitbart went with this headline. Establishment Republican Gillespie is second, and this is after being incredibly supportive of him during the campaign because he was a douchebag. But that's the way
that's funny.
They manage things.
It's an interesting interpretation, and Steve Bannon is a fascinating human being made of Play-Doh and gin. But the way I see it, again, I mean, like getting back to that clip, I'll take your conservative populace and raise you a sprinting tortoise. It's not a thing, and people are starting to see it now that it's not a thing. The establishment lost, and Trump's establishment now, and the ugly face is unmasked. He took the mask off of the way it's always been.
Yes.
They try to pitch him as a populist. He mentions free trade agreements. He does that. That's true, but he's not a populist. He's a nativist. He tries to take people who normally would and perhaps should vote finally based on economic issues that have been hoodwinked by Republicans and in some cases Democrats in the past, and tries to get them to focus even more on, as you said, people kneeling or not kneeling. Where's their knee? Let's focus on that for a little while. That's not populism, okay? That's white supremacy for the most part.
It's race baiting.
Exactly. Now, overall, they're all going to say if only he'd embraced Trump. Trump's super popular, and yet ABC News found that in Virginia, voters by a 2-1 margin said they were casting their ballot to show opposition to Trump rather than support for him. In New Jersey, the margin was 3-1. Now, that's not going to represent all voters. Lots of voters go for other reasons. They have a particular issue they care about, or they love or hate the candidates in that race. But those who were driven by Trump were driven in opposition to Trump, not in support of Donald Trump. And that is not just going to hurt Gillespie. That's going to hurt a lot of Republicans in the future.
Now, can we talk about the silver lining then? Again, we talked about this.
We can talk about as many silver linings as you want.
The silver lining of Trump being president is that stuff like this is happening. And that we can, they just are going to, looks like they might flip the legislature in Virginia, even
it's
though
possible. I think we're going to talk about that when we come back from the break.
Okay, so we'll talk about it then. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is certainly a silver lining. Actually, when we come back from the break, we're going to have an incredibly consequential Virginia-specific policy silver lining. You know what? We're actually getting on. Why don't we go to that first break? When we come back, a little bit more out of Virginia that's even bigger than Northam's victory after this.
I'm super excited because we have different levels of members. They pay $10 a month, but there are some members that pay a little more. Executive producers, for instance. My favorite thing about executive producers is that we have quarterly calls with them. I love that I'm getting a little transparency and I'm knowing what you guys like and dislike, ideas on how to improve the show, topics that maybe we haven't heard of yet and you really want us to cover. We have so much respect for you because of the fact that you keep us independent and allow us to be uncensored, unfiltered, without worrying about corporate sponsors breathing down our necks and telling us what we can and can't say. So if you want to be a member, obviously no pressure. You can go ahead and join by going to tytnetwork.com/join. I'm going to ask some uncomfortable questions. The first topic that I said that we would discuss a little more is masturbation.
And then I was swimming in a hazelnut river.
Are you sure you're not doing mushrooms? Oh my god, I can achieve an orgasm by myself.
Fuck that, I am going to talk about it, because there should be no shame on it. I think a lot about that because I love life.
That openness led to amazing.
And I keep saying to everybody, I got to go call my wife. I figured that was a good excuse that people can't say, hey, don't call your wife. I'm going to release bliss.
It's so weird because at that moment I felt this and it smelled like lavender.
At the end, you get to go chat. Nice chat. If you're a member of the Young Turks, you too will rock the world.
They'd rather lose to Republicans than have a progressive win with them. That's how dumb the corporate Democrats are.
The Democrats who love to sleep, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who push the right-wing agenda. Most of the people are either unemployed, underemployed, or fucked.
This is why you lost to Trump, you fucking moron. What the fuck is wrong with you? sure they were typing with one hand and going like this. The Democrats are dead. The way you feel right now, that's how a chump feels. Not freaked out.
Welcome back to the first hour of the Young Turks, everybody. Has some upbeat music for you. Thanks, Bart. Keeping us in good mood. You can't see us dancing, but he's dancing. He's dancing. Jimmy, Ron, and John. That could be a morning radio show.
Totally.
Jimmy, John, and Rod. Hey, I'm Hot Wing Six Pack and Helen.
I would listen to that briefly.
Coming up into the third hour, we got the douche nozzle. Let's do this. The douche nozzle.
Okay, I like that. So let's see.
It's 9:15, 15 minutes after the hour, 45 minutes before the top of the hour. We're going to traffic and weather 2 ways.
Get your tickets for Barry's Gentlemen's Club. Sorry, John.
No, that was good. It's been a while since I listened to talk radio, actually. Let's see, some tweets from you guys. I am socked with a good point. Trump tweeted that Gillespie didn't embrace him just so he didn't have to delete all of his tweets a la Luther Strange. And that's a good point. Is there much evidence so far this year of a race where Trump getting in there helped?
No, I can't think of one. I can't think of one.
Wildly unpopular man. Let's see. Bud Askin says, why do the Republicans sound like preachers when they lose, but Attila the Hun when they win? That's a great point. I don't know why. That's great. Let's see. And Chris Allen says, Trump is also dreading the 280 character tweets because that's too many characters for him to understand. Also, it provides even less cover for him to forcibly shorten those nicknames, like little, like with the little thing. You got room now, buddy. Just call him Little. I don't know if he'll do it, though. Anyway, lots more to get to. A little bit more on Virginia. Ralph Northam's victory in Virginia last night wasn't the extent of the beating that the Republicans took there. It also took place in the legislature as well. Before the election, Republicans enjoyed a 66-34 supermajority in the House of Delegates. Democrats picked up 15 of the 17 seats that they would need to flip that over. 3 seats, all currently held by Republicans, are currently too close to call. And I believe since we made that graphic, I think one more seat went to the Democrats. So there's still no guarantee. These are too close to call whether it might flip, but it still might at this point. Regardless, even if the rest go to Republicans, this is the largest Democratic gain in a single election in the state since 1899.
That's more than 2 centuries ago.
That's a long time. That's a long time.
The last century was the 20th century. The one before that was the 19th century. That was the 19th.
It's weird how that works. Now, what's interesting is that's a big flip. You don't normally see that since 1899. It looks like, but they're still perhaps going to be in the minority, even though Democratic candidates outperformed Republicans by about 9.4 percentage points, which is significant. I mean, we're a country of 51, 52 to 48, those sorts of races. When you win by almost 10 points statewide, you sort of expect that you might have control of that state's legislature, but you don't in a lot of states, and especially not in Virginia because of the gerrymandering that's been going on there and around the country for decades at this point. And that's one of the things where Northam, regardless of where he stands on the other issues, might be very significant. Because previously, you've had Republican legislatures and Republican governors to sign on to these redistricting plans that are very often racist, designed to suppress people's ability to influence politics. And it looks like that probably won't happen this next time around, which isn't just good for Northam. It's not just good for the Democrats that won, but for anyone who seeks, statewide or state legislature an election in the future in Virginia. Like, you need to have fair maps if you're going to have a chance there, and we might actually get that in the next few years.
Well, they say that the Supreme Court is going to decide on this gerrymandering thing soon, and
there's a case that in the near future could actually re-raise this.
And they're saying that it looked like this conservative court was giving favor to the people saying that gerrymandering is illegal, right? And they shouldn't do it. So
that's surprising.
That is surprising, right? Because those guys are freaking fascists, right? On the court, they don't give a shit. So it's weird that they're doing that. So who knows? Maybe we'll get rid of gerrymandering. I know in California, didn't Arnold Schwarzenegger do a thing where we now have to draw the districts correctly?
That sounds familiar. I wasn't around for that, but that does sound familiar. There's been a few state experiments where they'll either have particular tests for how fair, the map is. There's also, I think it's Arizona, maybe Nevada, that has an independent commission, a nonpartisan commission that has to go over it. I mean, the idea that you could allow the party that controls the state currently to choose what the map will be for next time, who thinks that's a good idea other than those people?
That would be it.
Yeah, and this is one of those issues that, it's like a foundational issue, like money in politics, where these sorts of issues affect the outcomes we have on all of the other more specific issues, like will we be able to raise the minimum wage, that sort of thing. Well, I mean, if you have the people who are winning elections based on biased maps or because of corporate donations, that affects not just one topic, but it affects all of the topics, which is why if you can fix these sorts of issues, if you can get money out of politics, if you can stop the gerrymandering, then that has ripple effects, like a virtuous cycle on so many other things. And this is just Virginia, but it's certainly, considering the extent of the gerrymandering here, that is good to see.
Well, and you want to talk about how we've mentioned there's some silver linings in this whole thing. One of the things that the Trump administration has done to a lot of the populace. Now, there's some people that like to pretend that everything was just hunky-dory and our democracy was flawless until Trump showed up. But a lot of people realize that's certainly not the case. It's a broken system that led us to Trump. So now people are talking about stuff like gerrymandering more than ever before. People are talking about how for the second time in less than 20 years, the popular vote winner doesn't sit in the White House. People are talking about a lot of that stuff and how all this stuff, which is just corruption, should have been gone years ago.
Yeah.
And you're even seeing alternative voting methods on the ballot in certain states, rate choice and stuff like that. So I think that we're recognizing that this democracy we need to spread everywhere else. We haven't really mastered it here at all and have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we have this sort of popular myth that things, I guess, the system was fucked up, but it mostly worked for a couple hundred years. That is a myth. Like, it was always rigged to benefit certain people, advantage them over others. We just sort of pretended that if we keep our head down, if we work hard, things will be fine. Mm-hmm. And if you were a particular sort of white person, for a long time, that might even be the case. But for a lot of Americans, it was never true, and it's certainly not true now, and people seem to be realizing that.
Well, I think people have been voting for change for quite a long time, at least since 2008. They've been voting for change every 2 years, and they are not getting it. And so now they're on to the establishment, and that all our institutions are crooked, corrupted by corporate cash. They're catching on to that now. The establishment sees that people are catching on to that, and their response is to distract everybody with Russia. And so Let me tell you something. 90% of the people in America wanted some kind of gun legislation. We didn't get it. Has nothing to do with Russia. 80% of the people wanted a public option. We didn't get it. Has nothing to do with Russia. 60 to 70% of the people want Medicare for all. We ain't getting it. It's nothing to do with Russia. People want free college. We ain't getting it. It has nothing to do with Russia. So if you want to know who's fucking over America, it's Americans. It's not Russia. That is a distraction from the establishment, so you don't talk about what's actually happening in the country. People keep voting for change. They still want change, which is why they voted for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton.
Well, obviously, we have a pretty fundamental disagreement about that. But the first one you talked about, the guns, did you see that yesterday there was an attempted vote to set up a select panel on gun violence? And the Republicans shot it down. Yeah. It wasn't gun control. No. It was a panel that maybe would have something eventually. They don't even want that. They don't even want you to look into it. Yeah. And that's just how many top 10 mass shootings in U.S. history do we have to have in a 30-day period before you set up a group to discuss?
I guess never.
The answer is it doesn't matter. I mean, the answer is until the NRA, and I sound like such a cynic when it comes to this topic, but it's just the reality. After Sandy Hook happened, and it's our children, and nothing. And I mean, even some of the stuff the Democrats proposed.
Money. Oh, and disproportionate influence, not just based on donations, but even in comparison to the donations they give.
But the NRA still has a big stronghold. I mean, they still have a ton of influence. I don't get it either. But I mean, that's just the reality. Until they are not a thing anymore, we're never going to have constructive gun policy in this country.
Well, I want to turn to something because the way that some of the politicians, right now it's Republican, but possibly Democrats as well, that are going to fight back against some of the big changes that are being proposed. We talked about one yesterday. We've got another one for you just today in the wake of yesterday's election. And once again, it's happening in Maine. Last night, voters in Maine voted on a ballot measure to expand Medicaid to low-income people living in that state. It's the first state to expand Medicaid during the Trump administration. It's also the first state ever to do it by ballot initiative rather than through legislation. Now, the legislature had actually passed 5 separate bills to expand Medicaid prior to this, but Governor Paul LePage, a Republican, vetoed all of them. So, okay, legislature can't get it done. The people are going to mobilize. It's always difficult to do these sorts of things because the industry comes in, they spend tons of money to try to shut it down, but they passed it, and Governor LePage he's not going to let it happen if he has any say. Now, the message that he used when he vetoed the previous ones and what he's using now is that it's too expensive. We can't afford to have health insurance for people. It's not a priority. But understand that Washington would pay 94% of the Medicaid expansion in 2018, and even once that drops, they're still paying 90%. I mean, that is a huge financial incentive to institute this sort of program in your state. But if you're ideologically opposed to it, if you don't like it, that's not enough, apparently. So Paul LePage not only vetoed those pieces of legislation, he's also going to attempt to stop the ballot initiative. He says, my administration will not implement Medicaid expansion until it has been fully funded by the legislature at all levels. The Department of Health and Human Services has calculated, and I will not support increasing taxes on Maine families, raiding the rainy day fund, or reducing services to our elderly or disabled.
So, raiding the rainy day fund, if it's not to give health care to sick, dying people, what is that for? For umbrellas? Is that for umbrellas or a park? Or is that
Jimmy, a police force might need a tank. We don't know.
Or a bigger
tank. Hold on to it.
What could possibly a rainy day fund be if not to ensure the health of your citizens? I guess that's not what it's there for, is it? It's there to be a political football for people in power.
Maybe for a nice tricentennial party. I don't know. They've got time. They can rebuild it. And so it would be one thing if it was just this, which is terrible. And, the people inside the state, both the activists and politicians, are saying that it will be illegal for him to block it, so they're going to make sure that he doesn't. We'll see if they're able to stop him. But this is coming off of just yesterday we were reporting that Maine had, last year in the election, they had voted to institute ranked choice voting in statewide elections there. He's also delaying that until 2021, if at all. And so right now there's a petition drive going on. If they can raise, I believe it's 61,000 and change signatures, then they can have a statewide vote on a people's veto of that bill. But how many times do the people have to take it into their own hands before they're able to get the actual change that they're voting for?
Well, I think there's two pretty key lessons here. First of all, and this is a basic one, your government's not working for you. Your government is just not working for you. And second of all, Jimmy said political football when it comes to funding and how are we going to afford this. In the case of healthcare and expanding Medicaid, that's the case big time. It is a political football. Look at what happened here in California, where we were fed this idea that, single payer, it would just mess up the state budget and this and that. Meanwhile, it would actually be lower on our GDP than what we're currently spending. That's like saying, hey, you're paying $300 a month for your car. Hey, if we do it this way, you're going to get a better car, and it's only going to cost you $200 a month. And you turn around and say, I can't afford an extra $200. No, that 300, that's going away, though. You know that, right? I'm not a mathematician.
Right. It does make sense if you were the guy selling the more expensive, shittier car.
Yep.
And then it makes sense to
or if you have a financial incentive to keep that expensive car on people.
It is kind of stunning that they're able to do this publicly, right? That
he's not hiding it.
He's not hiding it.
Wait. It was immediately, no, we're not doing it.
I am not giving health care to poor sick people. That's just it. Like, and by the way, I don't have an alternative plan to get him that. I'm just going to stop this one and no plan to get him that because I don't give a shit. It's like, there's no shame anymore. I mean, just Chris Hedges talks about how the corporate class steals right out in front in the open now, which they do, and it's just like stuff like this, like we just deny people healthcare in the richest country in the world, even after the people voted for it. It's just like this disconnect of our ruling elite. But by the way, doesn't it make you wonder how the fuck did that guy get elected in the first place?
I have no idea how he got elected in the first place. I mean, this is the dude who was making those racist comments about out-of-state drug dealers.
Yes.
Now, he apparently, I believe we checked today, next year is his last year. He's term limited. He can't run again unless he personally changes the state constitution. He seems to be a bit of a dictator and made him do whatever he wants. And so, to some extent, that may be even breeding worse behavior from him because he figures, I'm leaving next year anyway. I'm doing whatever the hell I want now.
Well, I heard that
very brazen.
I heard that when you call his office, an intern just picks up the phone and tells you to go fuck yourself. I don't know if that's the concern.
I can imagine that. Okay, we are going to take our second break. When we come back, Donald Trump is in South Korea. Let's see if we're on the brink of a new nuclear war, and we have an update on exactly how much this Republican tax plan is going to add to the national debt and how that might affect you after this.
I saw a picture of John. I was like, look at this fucking badass Viking he met on his trip. I was like, oh wait, that's John.
Yeah.
His beard is so gross. I swear to God, I didn't recognize him. I thought it was like a dude from up there, like a Viking-looking dude from up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, we've got our own Viking. Look at Johnny Pie. Johnny Pie, we miss you, big guy. And he was at Svalbard. We were talking about how he was going to go get the grains if he's the last person on Earth, and he's going to, or among the last people on that ship, and repopulate the Earth after North Korea. At least he's got the grains. He knows where it is. He can find it. Don't worry. Humanity will be saved. Yet again, by a white male. John Idaho.
Hey, what's up?
Aaron, what do you like better? The rabies or the rabies? Go.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown. Was that good, guys?
Okay. Not enough hashtag use. Hashtag abs, hashtag model, hashtag woke bay.
Hashtag one black friend.
I'm thinking more rings.
I got them here.
You need more accessories. Way more accessories.
I don't know where to put them.
Come on, throw these on. Woke bay, not sleep bay.
More sexy, too.
When's the last time you posted on Instagram? Too long. Come on, man. No, you need to post at least once an hour.
What's the outfit of the day today? Is this what you're going with?
No. We need more accessories. We need...
This doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't. For your gay audience, man.
Yeah, the gays love you, man.
Okay. What else? What else do I need to do?
You haven't appropriated a culture in a week.
We have like a kimono or something.
Yeah, that looks good on you, dude.
Perfect. How many rings you got on? Do you have any more?
I got 3.
Yeah, can we get more rings on this?
And when you're done, kiss the ring. Look at the camera. Kiss the ring. Maybe like a little wink.
Islam's role in terrorism and all the Huffington Post articles were doing well. I was in.
How many likes did our last outfit of the day picture have?
only like 10,000.
So I think that's where your focus needs to be. I hear you on all the blah, blah, blah social issues. We need to focus on followers.
Kids in Yemen.
We don't care if you sleep at night.
Dab, dab.
Okay, dab. There you go.
More.
Talk about yourself more.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, be more into it.
Instagram. This is important for me. Americans losing access to healthcare coverage.
I hear you. Attack Tommy more.
I've done it. So many. She shoots out of her living room now. It's like punching down now.
We're okay with that. It helps the brand.
We made you. We got you verified.
You're nothing
come
without
on.
us.
So I don't know what else I need to do here.
Just take off that shirt.
That's exactly why Tommy Lauren is stupid. I hate you. I'm Hassan Piker. Follow me on Instagram.
Hashtag woke bay.
Hashtag woke bay. Please follow me. Please.
Welcome back to what remains of the first hour of the Young Turks, Jimmy and Ron and John. We've got more for you in just a second. A couple tweets I want to read. I think this is the case that you were actually referring to. Daniel Perea says, hopefully Gill versus Whitford will just find that all gerrymandering is unconstitutional.
Is that it?
Okay, I think that's the one. I mean, God only knows if that got to the Supreme Court where they would come down on that. That seems like exactly the sort of thing that the Supreme Court would have refused to even hear. Yeah.
Does a state matter?
Yeah, that's the sort of thing, like, if only there was a way that we could, like, change our Constitution and make it better over time, like, they should have added that. Anyway. Okay, Art Murray says, Sandy Hook Elementary and the congressional baseball game. Consider the victims in those two incidents and the fact that no legislation resulted from either, and it's clear that nothing will prompt legislation. Yeah, if we don't protect kids, and if the legislators won't even protect themselves, we're screwed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not happening without a change in the way we finance collections.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, there would still be a bunch of Republicans that would, they'd want to seem pro-gun, have guns around, but, like, the numbers would drop so fast.
Can I just make this real quick about guns? So people always tweet at me about, oh, yeah, stupid liberal, the government's taking all our rights away, and you want to give away our guns too?
Mm-hmm.
They already took our rights away. So you say you want to have the guns to protect you from the tyranny of the government. The government already passed. We live in a surveillance state. Habeas corpus has been repealed. They already took away your liberty, and now you got your gun. What are you fucking waiting for? Go attack the government and get your liberty back. But that's not why you have the gun. It's not about fucking liberty, and you know it. That's some stupid argument thought up by the NRA in a think tank, and Sean Hannity says it, and then you repeat it. And it makes absolutely no sense. Your government's already been taken from you. Your liberty's already been taken from you. You got a gun? Go get it back. Oh, you can't? Because the goddamn government will drone bomb your ass in your fucking house, you dummy. And now we only have guns to kill other people, other citizens. That's all they're there for.
But Jimmy, if you didn't have your rights anymore, wouldn't you at least want to be able to shoot like a really cool gun?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
you're right.
you got some free time, shoot a cool gun.
That's right. It makes me forget that I don't have my rights anymore.
Yeah, but I'm with you. It doesn't really solve anything. You know, it's just like, yeah, we don't have any online privacy anymore, and shooting your laptop's not going to change that. You're just going to be out of laptop.
But it does make me feel erect.
I want to recognize a couple of members before we get back to the news. They don't have the numbers anymore. I don't know where they're not going with that. Well, Catherine Brady, I don't know what number you are, but thanks. And Salvador Morales, thank you for supporting TYT. Why'd they take the numbers out? I wonder why. I used to like that. Anyway, let's jump back into the news. Donald Trump addressed the Parliament of South Korea yesterday, and we're here today, so I guess the world didn't end. That's good. I was really worried about what he might say there, but we do want to go through some of his commentary and see what we can expect in the near future from the diplomatic efforts between the U.S. and North Korea and South Korea and also China, of course, all related players here. So we got a couple of videos of Trump. First, here he is drawing a fairly hard line vis-a-vis him and North Korea.
The regime has interpreted America's past restraint as weakness. This would be a fatal miscalculation. This is a very different administration than the United States has had in the past. Do not underestimate us, and do not try us. I also have come here to this peninsula to deliver a message directly to the leader of the North Korean dictatorship. The weapons you are acquiring are not making you safer. They are putting your regime in grave danger. North Korea is not the paradise your grandfather envisioned. It is a hell that no person deserves.
He's such a slow reader. It's so funny.
Well, he thinks that if he talks slower, it'll sound like he has gravitas.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's having trouble with teleprompter, and he's like, here in his mind, he hears the word, and then he says it just to make sure.
Yeah, he has to read it first, and then you will be devastated. it's like he's on Thorazine or something. Like, did he take a couple too many Vicodins and he's got to read something out loud?
It's like this State of the Union. You have to constantly pause for applause.
Yeah.
He needed to give them ample time to sigh really long and hard. You know, you don't want to interrupt that.
Yes.
So look, he's said worse things and more threatening things in the past. He talked about meeting North Korea with fire and fury, which is a line he got off of Game of Thrones. Like, he said worse things, but this is still pretty aggressive. And I'm gonna be honest, like, just from an outside point of view, does he think that they don't know that we have thousands of nuclear weapons? They know we can annihilate every single inch of it. I don't get this stupid posturing like this is high school. Yeah. We could nuke every bit of it, and a whole bunch of other stuff too. We could do that. We could nuke it, and then we could look at it with a drone and be like, oh, that section is still not shiny enough, and we could nuke it again. Obviously, what is the point of this back and forth? Or unless it does have nothing to do with North Korea, and this is purely he's hoping that if Fox News plays some of this video, he'll look strong and dignified and whatever back here. Maybe that's who he's targeting with this sort of commentary.
I don't know who. First of all, everybody's been bellicose about North Korea, including John McCain and including Hillary Clinton, so he is also that way.
Mm-hmm.
But Chomsky, according to Chomsky, North Korea has offered many times to end their nuclear program, and they just wanted us to stop doing war games on their coast. And we said, no thanks, we're going to keep doing that. So every year we have this huge, looks like we're invading their country, and they don't know if we are or not. And so far we haven't, but we do these huge war games. We fly B-1 bombers over their country and everything, and we're just constantly doing that. And Kim Jong has asked us to stop doing that, and he'll give up his nuclear program According to Chomsky, we've said no, and that was Barack Obama's administration repeatedly saying no. So, again, it's us being the aggressor, and to me, this is, again, the military-industrial complex wanting us to stay afraid of somebody so they can justify spending $1 trillion on nuclear bombs in the next couple of years. So that's what I think this is about. I don't think this is about anything else except the military-industrial complex wanting to keep us afraid, which is why we keep terrorism going, which is why we fund ISIS and train them. That's what we're doing so we can keep this war going perpetually. And guess what? It's working like a charm.
But Jimmy, I didn't hear in his speech him talk about the military-industrial complex. I mean, he talked a lot about how South Korea should buy billions of our dollars worth of our weapons, bombers and tanks and all that.
Right?
Yeah, I love it.
So that's what this is.
No, you dummy. You speak in lofty terms, and then you go in a back room and you sell them billions of dollars worth of weapons. You don't do it in a speech, you moron.
Right. Yes, exactly right. Okay, so it's obvious what's happening.
Here's the thing. You know how we all have that friend, or friends, or family members who have no filter, no sense of subtlety, and you have to be really careful what you say around them because you never know when they're going to repeat the wrong thing at the wrong time. Well, now that guy's president.
Yeah.
That guy's president. And domestically, this is a tool for progressives. Yeah. Trump is a gift to progressives, and I think we're seeing that now because he's showing Republican policies for what they really are. The subtlety's gone. Internationally, of course, it's embarrassing and it's kind of gross. But the other thing he really is unmasking, he's unmasking how ugly our military-industrial complex really is. He's unmasking the point that it's all about resources. He's unmasking the point that it's all about oil and stuff like that. It's not about the lies that were sold. Donald Trump is unmasking that, again, unintentionally, but it's happening.
Yeah, the one thing that, I'm like, as we're watching this, I'm just wondering what the people in the audience are thinking, how they're reacting and all that. And obviously, like, this is in South Korea. They are, like, 2 consecutive stone throws away from North Korea. Like, the most densely populated part of South Korea is very close to the DMZ. Back in grad school, we read detailed hour-by-hour analyses of what would happen if hostilities broke out between North Korea and South Korea. How many lives would be lost each hour from North Korean artillery, which riddles the mountains not far from the DMZ. And, like, every person in South Korea, people who live in Seoul, know what will happen if this conflict starts. And I don't get from Donald Trump any idea that he takes it seriously or that he understands how much it matters that we not go to war with North Korea. That whether they can ever reach the U.S. with a missile or not, what they can do to our allies in South Korea would be historically devastating. And he goes there and he blusters. He wants to look strong and all that. And like hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of lives are on the line. Anyway, there was another section of his speech. This goes to your point about the lack of subtlety. Now, this is about... Before we're talking about the finances of the U.S. with the military-industrial complex, this is going to be a little bit more personal in this section.
You know what I'm going to say. The women's U.S. Open was held this year at Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey. And it just happened to be won by a great Korean golfer, Sung Hyun Park, and 8 of the top 10 players were from Korea. And the top 4 golfers, 1, 2, 3, 4, the top 4 were from Korea. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah, you libs like to criticize him, call him stupid, but he said the top 4, and then he recited all 4. Right in a row. 1, 2, 3, and 4. In order.
Yeah.
The right order, even.
Do you think anyone actually knew he was going to go there? So he's like, you know where I'm going. No, we're not. A golf tournament. Oh, shit, yeah. That's where you're going. Okay.
You know where I'm going. Something about the crowd size at your inauguration? I don't know. I'm not sure. But there, he's once again in a major address to the parliament of an ally. I don't think that one of our presidents has addressed their parliament since the 90s. He goes there, he says, it's a historic opportunity, and he talks about a shitty golf course. Or maybe it's a nice golf course, I don't know. But again, like, this is not highly ranked on the fears, but one of our fears is this dude is using international addresses to make some money. Personally.
Yes.
Like, we expect that they're going to try to, get money for U.S. corporations. That's, why they do these trips. But he's trying to personally enrich himself with golf fees.
Yes.
That's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing that he does it so, let me say it, in such a clumsy way.
Mm-hmm.
He does it in such a, he's supposed to do it a lot secretly. Like we said before, he's supposed to not do it in your speech. You're supposed to do it, go enrich yourself behind the scenes, which is what politicians normally do.
Yeah.
A lot of politicians take money from foreign governments and what have you. He's, again, ripping the pretty fat mask off of it, and he's letting it say, hey, I'm going to use this position to enrich myself. I don't know if you know, but Barack Obama is going to be worth about $100 million pretty soon. What do you call that? The Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton are worth over hundreds of millions of dollars. So what do you call that? Dylan Ratigan has said that Barack Obama got paid off by the finance industry and the medical industry, so we don't have a functioning banking system or a functioning healthcare system. And Hillary Clinton filled her pockets so she could do weapons deals around the world. That's according to Dylan Ratigan. So this isn't anything new that Trump's trying to use his position to personally enrich himself. That's how corrupted the swamp is, and that's why we got Trump.
Okay, let's turn to a related issue, because this is actually one of the ways they're going to do this on a broader scale. We've got some good news and some bad news for you when it comes to the Republican tax bill. The good news is for the Republicans, the bad news for you, me, the rest of the panel, and the country, unfortunately, because we now know how much this tax plan is likely to add to the national debt, coming from the CBO. The CBO recent analysis relied on the Joint Committee of Taxation's finding that the bill would cut revenues by $1.4 trillion over 10 years, I love this sentence, which falls within the level Republicans allowed themselves in their budget resolution. But that's actually not how much it's going to cost. With debt servicing, it's going to cost $1.7 trillion, which is more than what they allowed themselves. But,
they might allow it, though.
We'll call it good.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, so that's significant because that means that Republicans will be able to pass the bill through budget reconciliation, meaning they need only a simple majority rather than the 60 votes which you needed during the Obama years to pass every single piece of legislation.
They actually, Obamacare got passed on a 51 vote, actually.
That is true. That is true, yes.
So, this is how you beat Trump. You go after his bullshit policies, his giveaways to billionaires, him refilling the swamp after he drained and he found his cabinets at the bottom of the swamp. So this is how you beat Trump. You come after him when you talk about healthcare, you beat him. When you talk about his bullshit tax policies, you beat him. When you talk about how he's spending an extra $80 billion a year on military nobody wants, you beat him. When you talk about Russia, that strengthens him. So I would go at his economic policies, which are only favoring the rich and screwing over everybody else, and that's how you beat him.
What's interesting about this bill in particular is they sort of waited to roll it out, but we knew basically what was going to be in it. So by the time it had come out, less than a third of the country had a favorable impression of it. And I saw a couple days ago that it said 60% of the country thinks that it's designed to benefit the wealthy. 60%? Why not 40%? Doesn't see that or doesn't care?
Maybe I don't know. I'm going to guess. So you have the top 20% earners. Okay, they're happy. So you're really talking about maybe 20%, and maybe they're uninformed. They don't watch the news. And I answered my phone, and I'm like, I don't know about it. So maybe they're just the uninformed,
or they're desperate for the approval of the top 20%.
Oh, maybe
sort of an aspirational thing.
Yeah. So there's this thing too that people even Joe Biden went down when he was campaigning, and he said, rich people are just as patriotic as poor people. Bernie might not want to hear that, but that's the truth. Mm-hmm. So that's that bullshit of the rich people pay most of the taxes. It's that idea that somehow we're imposing on rich people when we ask them to pay their fair share, and so we have guilt about it. And rich people pay most of the. So they also
I feel bad for the rich.
Me too.
Yeah, think about what they could do. Think about the countries they could buy if they weren't paying taxes so that we could have, roads and stuff.
They're just trying to make more jobs. They're just trying.
So someday they're going to do it.
So people don't understand that you don't tax a guy's first house as highly as you tax a guy's second house or third house. Do you understand that? So you tax wealth, you don't tax necessities. You got to have necessities. You don't want to tax those, but you don't have to have a summer home or a vacation condo. That's what you tax, and that's how you pay for shit. And that's how you stop having dynasties if you have an estate tax, by the way. And so if you don't have an estate tax, that hurts the economy. Yeah. Okay.
By the way, I saw another thing. This was an analysis by, I think, the Tax Policy Center that showed that by 2027, people making, when you say like 20%, top 10%, people don't exactly know where they're at necessarily, and a lot of people believe they're better off than they actually are. But let's talk specifics. People making between $30,000 and $75,000 a year with children would actually see their taxes go up. Now, the people below that see their taxes go a little bit down, but it saves them $10 a year or something like that. And the same for the people above them. But those people in the actual literal middle class pay more in taxes under this plan. But think about what you get for those taxes. You get to enrich a billionaire.
That's nice. And take healthcare away from you.
Yeah. I mean, you may not have your tax money anymore, but you can probably fire a pretty cool gun. Probably do that.
Well, and again, look at what this is adding to the debt. One of the things Donald Trump ran on, we're going to be fiscally responsible. I'm going to run this like one of my businesses, which I always knocked it out of the park with those businesses, wink, wink. But he ran on that, and now look at what this is adding to the debt. Again, and what is this? These are Republican policies that he's parroting.
Right.
He's doing a bad job at.
So this isn't just him uniquely Trump. This is just regular Republican stuff.
Well, this is what we always see. We talk about this on the show. We've done it year after year after year. If there's a Democratic president, then Republicans are fiscally conservative. They care about debts and deficits. They can even start a Tea Party based purely on that. And then they get in power. They get a president. And suddenly they'll allow themselves $1.5 trillion a year.
That's healthy.
In extra. The debt was already going up every year. This is more. This is accelerating the process. And the danger here is that if this thing gets passed, it's not just a huge giveaway, but at some point, someone is going to have to be responsible with with the way that they're going to destroy the federal budget and the added deficits and the added national debt. And so what happens in a few years when a new president comes in? What is he going to be able to afford to do if they've already given all that money to corporations in the top 1%?
That's the point, John. They want to break government. They want to bankrupt it so people think government doesn't work because they just came. Well, it's that old joke about the Republicans say government doesn't work, then they get elected and prove it.
Exactly.
So that's what they're trying to do.
Get elected to prove it.
Yeah, they're trying to break it so nobody else can even fix it after they get done breaking it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why this is one of, after the healthcare scare earlier in this year, now this, if they get this is so much better than just a tax giveaway for them. This gives them so much in ripple effects years down the line. This absolutely has to be stopped. And
you think the Democrats will stand up to them?
I don't know. I mean, so far I haven't seen any Democrats that have said that they might vote for it, and there's several Republicans that have said that if this adds to the deficit, they won't vote for it. They say a lot of things, though. Yeah. I mean, Republicans, three Republicans voted against the repeal of Obamacare. So anything could happen. John McCain could do his thumb thing again and maybe save us from a shredded federal budget, but we'll see. I honestly don't know. And we only have 2 weeks before they intend to vote on this thing.
I hope Jimmy Kimmel finds out about this. Because that helps.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, all of a sudden he started. I mean, I think that had a lot to do with John.
Oh, you're talking about his video there?
Because he kept talking about the healthcare. But I think that did have a lot to do with it.
A lot of people
and so Jimmy Kimmel and other people start talking about this nonstop like they were. I think that's what we need to do is raise awareness of the horrible shit that they're actually doing.
You're in that community. Both of you guys, comedians. Talk to those late night hosts. I don't know. They don't return my calls.
You know what's weird? Jimmy Kimmel doesn't even take my call. Isn't that fucked up? Not only does he not return it.
Me neither. Yeah. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we're already a couple minutes over. Thank you for joining me, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Great to have you on. We're going to take a short break, but when the show comes back, they're going to break down a number of the historic wins in the elections across the country last night and a whole lot more. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a few.
We're both sick. Don't make any jokes about us getting sick together. It happened on separate occasions. Jason was in Vegas. I was in LA. That's what happened.
The subscription to this channel is free. The videos are free. Everything is free. I don't know why I get paid.
We don't know. We're having fun. You remember that 3-letter word? Fun. I crave your name, and I'm going to destroy you.
Respect my name.
It's the money, the cars, the clothes, and that's what basketball brags about. That's what football brags about. That's what rap brags about. Those are the items of respect in these communities.
The graphics package at TYT Sports is better than FS1 and Fox.
We pay them in graphic transitions.
Oh,
Oh, I
grab candy all the time. Let's be fucking real.
Where his balls.
But it is wrong that when people take a stand and fight for social justice, that somehow that is turned against them in America.
Wow, can't speak. Am I high? No, but maybe.
Jason Rubin. Looking great these days.
My girlfriend says the same
I
thing.
know.
A lot of vagina.
A lot of vagina.
Yes! Let's try to see what these sorts.
Things you have in common with your daughter?
I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that.
You said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
All right, post game here in Studio Magico Internet Television.
A lot of condom breaking stories.
Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of.
When the kid cries, perhaps that's the that is an opportunity to do so. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my god.
I love that video.
Yeah, man, I got a great achoo. You're like, my mouth was open, she sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk. Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna.
Yeah.
When we're off the air, I'm going to be like, how is this going to work?
When you get to already asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's, and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but Daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean, why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. Why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. And here's what's different. Like, it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that. I can't wait to see it.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship. We don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited. Did anybody call for it? Editor.
Need this in an hour. You're an editor too. Fuck you.
Back on the Young Turks, Hannah Cranston here with Brett Ehrlich and Ambria Allen. Excited for this hour. We have I think some good stories. The first one, I think after last night, I think we're all feeling like a little pep in our step. We're all feeling a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more excited. So I have some hopeful stories, but then of course, we're still in the era of Trump, so there are some other stories that might depress you.
You gotta take the bitter with the sweet.
Yes.
You know?
What a beautiful statement.
Oh, I made that up. I made that up.
1920s of you. From Brett Ehrlich here on the Young Turks.
I'd also like to add, I have no idea what time it is. I took an early flight this morning, fell asleep, woke up, no hot water, showered at the gym. We'll see how this goes.
Where did you come from?
I was in Las Vegas. Stayed at the
I feel
Mandalay.
like this is the third time I've seen you in Las Vegas this week.
Yeah, I was in Las Vegas. I stayed at the Mandalay Bay. They had. I thought it was interesting. They sent an email to me because I have a
gambling app on my phone, but they're like saying we encourage you to support us by coming and accepting 2 free nights at the Mandalay Bay. So I had.
How much do you actually gamble?
Oh, no money. It's actually more depressing.
When the place is sending you free trips to come, you must gamble a lot.
Well, what they do is they give you loyalty points for playing it, and it costs